The tactical display showed a blue-green world suspended in the black, and Commander Thex'ala felt the familiar tightness in his throat sacs that came before a certain victory. His scanning officer had just delivered the report he'd been waiting for: minimal defensive installations, no orbital weapons platforms, scattered population centers with primitive infrastructure. Earth lay before the Krythani Dominion fleet like a fruit waiting to be plucked. "Confirmed readings, Commander," said Scanna Prime Velkin, his crystalline carapace reflecting the holographic glow. "Surface analysis shows approximately 4,700 major population centers, none exceeding 20 million inhabitants. No planetary shields, no mass driver installations. Orbital traffic is entirely commercial cargo vessels, research stations, communication satellites. We detected approximately 3,000 armed vessels in near-orbital space." Thex'ala's mandibles clicked in amusement. 3,000. The Dominion had brought 18,000 warships to this conquest, each one capable of glassing a continent. 3,000 defenders against our armada. These humans are either supremely confident or catastrophically unprepared. "Their communication arrays are certainly active," offered Communications Tertiary Shikson. "We've intercepted thousands of transmissions. They know we're here, yet they've made no move to evacuate or mobilize." That was unusual, Thex'ala had to admit. In his 40 cycles of service to the Dominion, he'd subjugated 14 species. All of them had reacted to an invasion fleet with either desperate military buildup or panicked evacuation. These humans did neither. Their orbital traffic continued its lazy commercial patterns. Their planetary communications showed elevated activity, but no hysteria. Their political entities had issued formal protests, as though the Dominion were a neighbor whose tree had dropped leaves on their property. "Perhaps they don't understand what they face," suggested Tactical Second Dreadnought, a young officer on his first conquest. "Their species has had faster-than-light travel for less than 2 standard cycles. They may not comprehend the scale of interstellar warfare." "Then they'll learn," Thex'ala said, settling his bulk more comfortably into his command throne. "Velkin, what of their defensive technology? What capabilities should we expect from those 3,000 vessels?" The Scanna Prime manipulated the holographic controls, pulling up detailed analyses. "Kinetic weapons primarily. Magnetic accelerators. Missile systems. Directed energy weapons in the early coherent light spectrum. Nothing we haven't encountered before. Their largest vessels mass approximately 1.2 million metric tons. Respectable for a young species, but we have 40 dreadnoughts each massing 12 million tons. Thex'ala allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Dominion had been expanding for 3,000 standard cycles, perfecting the art of conquest. These humans, barely out of their gravity well, thought themselves ready to stand against such might. They would learn humility. "One oddity, Commander," Velkin continued, his tone uncertain. "The planet itself seems underdeveloped for a species of their technological level. Large sections of the surface are entirely uninhabited. Vast regions of ocean, forest, even desert that show no signs of exploitation. It's as if they're wasteful," Thex'ala interrupted. "Primitive resource management. Another sign of their youth as a spacefaring civilization. They leave wealth untapped while they play at being a galactic power." He gestured to the communications station. "Shikson, transmit our standard terms. A conditional surrender within 1 planetary rotation, or we begin the cleansing." The communications officer worked his console, broadcasting the Dominion's ultimatum across all human frequencies. The message was clear and had been refined across centuries of conquest: to submit, accept Dominion oversight, provide tribute and labor, or face extinction. Simple, effective, inevitable. On Earth's surface, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation dome of the Yellowstone Research Station and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. The mountains in the distance were the same mountains that had stood here for millions of years before humans evolved, and they would stand here long after. That thought gave her comfort, even as the alien armada hung in the sky like a promise of fire. "You should see the feeds from the major cities," her colleague Marcus said, stepping up beside her with a cup of coffee in each hand. He offered her one, and she accepted it gratefully. "People are concerned, obviously, but there's no panic. The parks are still full. Restaurants are still open. I saw a news report from New Mumbai. They're actually holding a festival to celebrate human resilience." "Of course they are." Sarah sipped the coffee, letting its warmth ground her. "Earth isn't going anywhere. We've survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We'll survive some arrogant aliens who don't know what they're looking at. They think we're defenseless," Marcus said. "It wasn't a question. They scanned Earth." Sarah smiled, an expression with no humor in it. "They looked at our beautiful planet and saw what we intended them to see. Cities in balance with nature, protected wilderness, clean oceans. They have no idea what humanity actually built out there." She gestured upward, toward the stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky. "Mars Command must be watching this with interest." Mars Command, Lunar Defense, the Belt Stations, the Jovian Fleet Yards. Sarah ticked them off on her fingers. "Hell, even the Kuiper outposts are probably on alert. These Krythani think they're invading humanity. They've just put themselves between Earth and her very, very protective siblings." Marcus laughed, but Sarah could hear the edge of tension in it. They were both scientists, not soldiers. They understood intellectually that Earth was the most protected world in human space precisely because it was demilitarized, but knowing and feeling were different things. It was hard to feel safe when 18,000 alien warships hung over your world like a sword of judgment. "The transmission came through an hour ago," Marcus said quietly. "Standard Dominion terms. Surrender or die." Did Luna respond? "Officially, yes. They told the Krythani that Earth is a protected world under the Homeworld Preservation Act, and that any hostile action would be met with overwhelming force." Marcus paused. "Officially," Commander Park's actual words were, "Come try it, you chitinous fucks, and find out why we keep our weapons away from the pretty planet." Sarah snorted coffee and had to cough to clear her lungs. "I like Commander Park. Everyone likes Commander Park." She once punched out a mining executive who tried to bribe the Environmental Protection Fleet. Marcus checked his tablet. "We're supposed to shelter in place. The shields over the major population centers are being powered up, just as a precaution. But honestly, Sarah, I don't think we're in danger. If the Dominion actually attacks Earth, they won't live long enough to fire a second volley." "From your lips to the void," Sarah murmured. She finished her coffee and handed the cup back to Marcus. "I'm going to finish my data analysis on the wolf pack movements. If the world is ending, I want to at least have this quarter's research submitted." "That's the spirit," Marcus grinned. "Maintain normalcy in the face of alien invasion. Very human of you." Above them, hanging in the orbital space the Krythani had so carefully scanned, a commercial cargo hauler finished its scheduled delivery to the Earth Station Alpha and began the long burn toward Mars. Its hold, now empty of the agricultural supplies Earth had traded for Martian-manufactured computers, would be filled with machine parts and construction equipment for the journey back. The captain logged the course change, notified traffic control, and settled in for the 3-day trip. She didn't mention in her flight plan that her cargo hauler had been built in the Jovian shipyards with military-grade hull plating, that her engines could outrun most warships if needed, or that her holds contained enough supplies to support a refugee evacuation from any of the inner colonies. She didn't have to mention it. Every civilian captain in the solar system had received the same design specifications, the same training, the same understanding: get people to safety when the shooting starts. But she didn't expect to need those capabilities. Not really, because the Krythani had made the same mistake that the previous 6 alien species to threaten Earth had made. They'd looked at humanity's homeworld, seen its pristine nature and scattered cities, and assumed humans were weak. They'd scanned the wrong planet. Commander Thex'ala waited exactly 1 planetary rotation, as promised. When the humans responded with a polite but firm refusal of the Dominion's terms delivered by what appeared to be a junior diplomatic functionary, which Thex'ala found insulting, he gave the order he'd given 14 times before. Begin orbital bombardment. Target their capital cities first. Make it clear that resistance is futile. The command rippled through the fleet, and Thex'ala watched the tactical display with satisfaction as his warships moved into firing positions. This was always the moment he found most gratifying. The moment when a species realized their defiance had been foolish, when they saw their cities begin to burn and understood that the Dominion was not an enemy to be negotiated with but a force of nature to be endured. The first salvo launched. Kinetic penetrators, each one massing 1,000 metric tons, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. They would impact Earth's surface with the force of nuclear weapons, and there wasn't a defensive system in the galaxy that could stop them all. The Dominion had perfected this tactic over millennia. Thex'ala leaned forward, watching the telemetry as the kinetic rounds screamed toward Earth's major population centers. 10 seconds to impact. 5 seconds. 2 seconds. Commander, Velkin's voice cracked with confusion. The rounds are there being intercepted. The tactical display bloomed with hundreds of new contacts. They'd appeared seemingly from nowhere, emerging from positions that should have been empty space. Small, fast-moving vessels, barely a tenth the mass of a Dominion corvette, but they moved with impossible precision. As Thex'ala watched in disbelief, the interceptors positioned themselves in the paths of the kinetic rounds and fired. Not energy weapons, not missiles. They fired what appeared to be solid slugs at velocities that made Thex'ala's mandibles go slack. The rounds met the kinetic penetrators head-on, and instead of glancing off or being overwhelmed, they shattered them. Reduced 1,000-ton projectiles to expanding clouds of debris that would burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Every single round neutralized, Velkin reported, his voice hollow. Commander, those interceptors are using magnetic acceleration beyond anything in our database. The energy requirements alone should be, where did they come from? Thex'ala demanded. We detected no launch signatures, no engine burns. Reviewing sensor data now. Velkin's hands moved frantically over his controls. Commander, they were there all along, scattered throughout the orbital space. We classified them as debris, inactive satellites, commercial infrastructure, but they're warships, stealth vessels. They've been watching us since we entered the system. A cold sensation spread through Thex'ala's thorax. Stealth technology was not common in the galaxy. The Dominion itself had barely begun experimenting with it. For humans to have not just developed it but deployed it in such numbers, how many? He asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Scanning now. Velkin worked in silence for a long moment. 300,000 contacts, Commander. 300,000 stealth vessels in orbital position around Earth. They're powering up active sensors now. They want us to see them. The number made no sense. 300,000 warships. That was more than most galactic powers fielded in their entire navy. The Dominion itself only maintained 400,000 ships across an empire spanning 200 systems. For humanity, confined to a single solar system, to have matched that fleet size was impossible, the Thex'ala breathed. The resource requirements alone, we scanned their system. There's no industrial base capable of producing such numbers. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Human origin, audito and visual. Put it through. The holographic display shifted, replacing the tactical readout with the image of a human female. If the Thex'ala understood their sexual dimorphism correctly, she wore a uniform of dark blue and silver, and her expression was what humans called a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Good morning, Commander Thex'ala. I'm Admiral Jin Park, Luna Defense Command. I see you've met our welcome wagon. Pretty impressive, right? Those are Mk-7 Guardians. We've got about 300,000 of them in Earth orbit at any given time. Automated, AI-assisted, capable of tracking and intercepting any kinetic, missile, or energy weapon attack from orbit to ground. They've been there since before you arrived. You just didn't see them. The Thex'ala found his voice. You hid an entire fleet. Fleet? Oh no. Admiral Park's smile widened. Those aren't our fleet. Those are Earth's defense satellites. The fleet is somewhere else. Where? The word came out as a rasp. Well, that depends on which fleet you're asking about. The Martian home fleet is currently stationed in orbit around Mars, where we've been politely waiting for you to make your intentions clear. The Lunar Defense Fleet is in a similar position around our moon. The Belt Defense Force is scattered throughout the asteroid belt. They're miners mostly, but they take planetary security pretty seriously. And the Jupiter Fleet? Admiral Park paused, consulting something off-screen. The Jupiter Fleet is actually in transit. Should arrive in your area of operations in about 6 hours. They're the scary ones. The Thex'ala looked at Velkin. Confirm her claims. Full system scan. I want to know exactly what we're facing. What the scan revealed made the Thex'ala wish he'd stayed home. Mars hung in its orbit like a red sentinel, and surrounding it was a fleet that dwarfed the Dominion armada. Not 3,000 vessels, not 30,000. The scan counted 120,000 warships in Martian orbit, from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts that made the Dominion's largest ships look like shuttles. And they were burning toward Earth at acceleration rates that should have been impossible for vessels that size. Estimated time to engagement 6.3 standard hours, Velkin reported numbly. Commander, their largest vessels mass over 50 million tons. Their acceleration suggests power generation capabilities at least an order of magnitude beyond our own. And that's not counting the lunar fleet or the belt forces. How many total? Conservative estimate based on active sensor returns 400,000 warships across all fleets. Actual numbers may be significantly higher if they're employing stealth technology elsewhere in the system. 400,000. The Dominion had brought 18,000 to conquer humanity and considered it overwhelming force. They'd been outgunned by a factor of 20 to 1, and they'd never even known it. I don't understand, Dreadnought said softly. We scanned their system. We spent weeks analyzing their infrastructure. Where did this fleet come from? Admiral Park's transmission was still active, and she apparently heard the question. You scanned Earth, she said, her tone almost gentle now, the way one might speak to a child who'd made an understandable mistake. Beautiful planet, isn't it? We're very proud of Earth. It's our home, our garden, the place where humanity was born and where we intend to die, however many millions of years from now that might be. Did you see the forests, the oceans, the mountains and grasslands and deserts? Did you notice how much of the planet is still wild? How the cities blend into the landscape rather than dominating it? We saw inefficiency, the Thex'ala said. Waste, primitive resource management. You saw our choice. Admiral Park leaned forward, and her expression hardened. Earth is protected under the Homeworld Preservation Act. We don't mine here. We don't build heavy industry here. We don't station military forces here beyond the absolute minimum for traffic control and emergency response. Earth is sacred to us. It's the cradle of humanity, and we intend to keep it pristine. Then where Mars? The Admiral gestured, and her holographic display shifted to show the red planet. Mars is our industrial heart. We've been terraforming it for a century now. Still got a way to go, but we've already got 12 billion people living there. Shipyards in orbit that can build a dreadnought in 6 weeks. Manufacturing facilities that span entire continents. Mars is where we build things. Lunar is our fortress, defensive installations that could hold off an attack from half the galaxy. The belt is our mine, more raw materials than 1,000 species could use in 1,000,000 years. And the Jupiter system, she smiled again, and this time there was pride in it. The Jupiter system is where we keep the really impressive ships, the ones we hope we never have to use. Thex'ala felt something he hadn't experienced in his 40 cycles of service, genuine fear. You built all this in 2 cycles since achieving faster-than-light travel. 2 standard cycles? Admiral Park laughed. Commander, we've had FTL for 2 years. We've been building this fleet for 80 years. Ever since we left our gravity well and looked up at the stars and realized we weren't alone. We knew someone would come eventually, either as friends or as conquerors. We hoped for friends, but we prepared for conquerors. 80 years, Velkin whispered, without faster-than-light travel, confined to a single system. They built an empire's worth of warships. We had time, Admiral Park said. We had resources, and we had motivation. See, we've done a lot of terrible things to each other throughout our history. Wars, genocides, near-extinction events that we caused ourselves. We learned, slowly and painfully, that the only way to survive is to stand together. When we reached the stars and realized we might face threats from outside, that lesson took on new meaning. Earth unified in a way it never had before. Not under one government, we're too diverse for that, but under one purpose. Protect the homeworld, preserve humanity, never again be vulnerable to those who might want to destroy us. Thex'ala looked at the tactical display, at the 400,000 warships that were moving into attack formations throughout the Sol system, at the 300,000 automated defense platforms that could intercept any weapon his fleet might fire at Earth, at the blue-green planet that hung there, serene and beautiful, completely untouched by the military might that surrounded it. You baited us, he said. We didn't have to. Admiral Park shook her head. You baited yourselves. You scanned our homeworld, saw what you wanted to see, and assumed we were weak. It's the same mistake the Zothan hegemony made 4 years ago, and the Vranki collective 2 years before that, and 4 other species who thought Earth looked like an easy target. They all scanned our planet, counted our cities, measured our defenses, and decided we were ripe for conquest. What happened to them? We sent them home. The Admiral's expression softened. We don't want to destroy you, Commander Thex'ala. We're not the Dominion. We don't conquer. We don't subjugate. We don't want to add your territory to ours, or take your resources, or enslave your people. We just want to be left alone. We want to keep our beautiful planet safe and build our civilization in peace. But we will defend ourselves. Absolutely. Completely. Without hesitation, Dreadnoughts spoke up from his station. Your fleet could have stopped us the moment we entered your system. Why wait? Why let us threaten Earth? Because hope is a powerful thing, Admiral Park said, and there was something like sadness in her voice now. We always hope that this time will be different, that this time someone will come in peace instead of conquest, that we'll finally get to say hello to the galaxy as friends instead of enemies. We give every species that enters our system the chance to choose diplomacy, to see our beauty and our civilization, and decide they'd rather trade than fight. She paused. You made your choice when you fired on our planet. The Martian fleet was close now. Thex'ala could see them on the long-range sensors, a wall of metal and fury that was burning toward his position with terrifying speed. He'd commanded fleets for 40 cycles. He'd conquered 14 species. He knew a losing battle when he saw one. If we withdraw, he said slowly, will your fleet pursue? That depends on you. Admiral Park consulted something off-screen again. My scans show that your fleet hasn't deployed any planet-killer weapons. Your bombardment was targeted at our cities specifically, which suggests you wanted to conquer Earth intact rather than destroy it entirely. That's actually in your favor right now. It means you're not genocidal, just greedy. Greedy we can work with. We won't surrender. We're not asking you to. The Admiral leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of our outermost planet. You're going to maintain position there for 72 hours while we discuss terms. Then you're going to leave our system and not come back unless invited. In exchange, we won't destroy your fleet, which we absolutely could do in the next 6 hours. Does that sound reasonable? It was the most generous offer the Thex'ala had ever heard from a species with overwhelming military advantage. The Dominion, in his position, would have pressed the attack and annihilated the enemy to the last ship. These humans, who had the power to end his fleet and his life, were offering him a path to survive with honor intact. Why? He asked. We attempted to conquer your world. We fired on your cities. Why offer us mercy? Admiral Park was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was gentle. Because holding a grudge is exhausting, Commander, and because we remember what it's like to be afraid. Earth has been invaded before, you know. Not by aliens, by ourselves. By other humans who wanted power or resources or just to destroy what was different. We've been both the conquerors and the conquered. We've been both the victims and the monsters. And we learned that the only way to break that cycle is to choose something different. To be strong enough to defend ourselves, but wise enough not to become the thing we feared. She stood, and the camera followed her as she walked to what appeared to be a large window looking out at the Earth below. Look at our planet, Commander. Really look at it. That's not just our home. That's the only world in the universe that looks exactly like that. The only place where that specific combination of life and water and atmosphere and geology exists. It's unique, replaceable, and we nearly destroyed it ourselves through ignorance and greed. We almost lost the most beautiful thing we'd ever known because we couldn't see past our own immediate desires. She turned back to face the camera. We won't make that mistake again. Not with Earth, and not with the galaxy. We could have built our fleets and then gone out conquering, taking what we wanted from other species the way you've taken from others. We had the power, we had the technology, but we chose something different. We chose to stay home, to build our strength, to make ourselves so powerful that no one would ever threaten us again, and then to use that power only for defense, only to protect what we love. The Thex'ala looked at the tactical display again, at the overwhelming force that humanity had built not to conquer but to preserve, at the blue-green planet that hung there like a jewel, protected by children who loved it enough to turn an entire solar system into its guardian. We accept your terms, he said quietly. The Dominion fleet will withdraw. Good choice. Admiral Park smiled, and this time it was warm. Oh, and Commander, when you report back to your superiors, tell them something for me. Tell them that humanity is open to diplomacy, to trade, to cultural exchange, to all the good things that species can share with each other. We just won't tolerate threats. Spread the word. Sol system is off limits for conquest, but everyone else is welcome to visit peacefully. The transmission ended, and the Thex'ala sat in his command throne. Around him, his officers waited in silence. Begin withdrawal, he finally ordered. Full retreat to the outer system boundary. Send a message to Dominion High Command. Tell them we've encountered a species that cannot be subjugated through military force. Tell them he paused, trying to find words for what he'd witnessed. Tell them we found something we weren't expecting. Not weakness, not strength. Something else. What should I call it, sir? Asked Shixon. The Thex'ala thought about Earth hanging there pristine and protected, about the vast fleet built solely to defend it, about humans who could have conquered the galaxy but chose to stay home and guard their garden. Call it restraint, he said finally, and recommend that the Dominion learn to respect it. The Krythani fleet began its withdrawal, moving slowly and carefully away from Earth orbit. They maintained formation, kept weapons powered down, and made no aggressive moves. They knew they were being watched by thousands of sensors, tracked by thousands of targeting systems, and that any deviation from their course would be met with immediate and overwhelming response. Sarah Chen watched the alien fleet retreat from the observation dome, Marcus standing beside her once again with coffee for them both. The sunset was just as beautiful as it had been the day before, the mountains just as eternal, but something felt different, lighter. They're really leaving, Marcus said. Of course they are. Admiral Park doesn't bluff. Sarah sipped her coffee. Did you see the casualty reports? 0. They didn't manage to touch Earth. Not one round got through. 300,000 Guardians, Sarah murmured. Seems like overkill, doesn't it? But that's the point. Earth doesn't just get adequate protection. Earth gets absolutely certain protection. No chances. No risks. Nothing gets through. Marcus was quiet for a moment. It must be strange for them, he said finally. The aliens. To see Earth so peaceful and then realize what we built to keep it that way. To understand that we could have used all that power differently. That's what makes us human, Sarah said. We can build weapons that could shatter planets, and we choose to use them only as shields. We can create fleets that could conquer half the galaxy, and we choose to keep them home, watching over the world we love. She gestured at the wilderness around them, at the forest that stretched to the horizon, at the mountains that had stood unchanged for eons. This is what we're protecting, not cities or resources or territory. The wild places, the clean places, the beautiful places. We learned the hard way that once you destroy nature, you can't get it back. So we stopped destroying it. We made different choices, and built the biggest fleet in known space to make sure no one else could destroy it either. Exactly. Sarah finished her coffee and set the cup down. Come on, I need to check on those wolf packs. Life goes on, after all. Even when alien armadas show up. They left the observation dome and headed into the research station, leaving the sunset to paint the sky in colors no other world could quite match. In Martian orbit, the home fleet began its deceleration burn, the massive warships bleeding off velocity as they prepared to return to their stations. On the bridge of the dreadnought Olympus Mons, Commander James Okafor watched the Krythani fleet's withdrawal with satisfaction. All units report ready status, his tactical officer announced. Fleet weapons charged and targeting solutions maintained. The enemy is well within our engagement envelope. Maintain lock but do not fire, Okafor ordered. Let them leave in peace. That's what we promised. Sir, if I may ask, the tactical officer hesitated. We had them. We could have ended their fleet before they knew what hit them. Why let them go? Okafor smiled. Because we're not in the business of ending species, Lieutenant. We're in the business of protecting one. There's a difference. He gestured at the tactical display, where Earth hung like a blue gem in the vast dark. Look at that planet. Really look at it. 4.5 billion years old, and we nearly killed it in just a few centuries of industrial civilization. We poisoned the air, acidified the oceans, drove species extinct at rates not seen since the dinosaurs died. We almost destroyed the only home we'd ever known because we were too stupid and too greedy to see what we were losing. He stood, walking to the main viewport where Earth was visible in the distance. My great-great-grandmother grew up in a world where you couldn't see the stars from most major cities because of light pollution, where the oceans were choked with plastic, where forests burned and species died and the climate itself was turning against us. She told me stories before she died about what it was like to watch the world she loved slowly dying and feel helpless to stop it. But we did stop it, the tactical officer said. The Preservation Act, the off-world industrialization, the planetary restoration projects we did. Belly, we got there just in time, and only because enough people decided that Earth was worth saving more than any profit or convenience or short-term gain. Okafor turned back to face his crew. That's what makes us human, Lieutenant. Not our weapons or our ships or our technology. It's the fact that we can look at something beautiful and choose to preserve it. We can have the power to destroy and choose instead to protect. We can face enemies who want to conquer us, defeat them completely, and then let them leave in peace because we'd rather have future friends than present corpses. He returned to his command chair. That's the message we need to send to the galaxy. Not that we're strong, though we are. Not that we're dangerous, though we can be. The message needs to be that we're different. That humanity builds walls instead of empires. That we'd rather trade than conquer. That we've learned from our own mistakes and we're not going to repeat them on a galactic scale. Do you think the galaxy will listen, sir? Some will. Some won't. But eventually, word will spread. Earth is off limits. Sol system is defended. Humans are strong enough to be left alone. Okafor smiled, and maybe, just maybe, some of them will wonder why a species with this much power chooses to use it only for defense. Maybe they'll realize that strength without restraint is just tyranny, and that true civilization means protecting what you love instead of taking what you want. The Olympus Mons completed its deceleration burn and began the long cruise back to Mars. Around it, the home fleet settled into its regular patrol patterns, watching the Krythani withdraw but making no aggressive moves. Just watching, just protecting. On Lunar, Admiral Park filed her official report and then allowed herself a moment of relief. Another species had come, seen Earth's apparent weakness, and attacked. Another species had learned the truth and chosen to withdraw. Another species would spread the word, don't threaten humanity's homeworld unless you're prepared to face a fleet that could challenge galactic empires. She walked to her office window and looked down at Earth hanging in the black sky. From here, you could see the continents, the vast oceans, the swirls of white clouds that meant weather and water and life. You could see the lights of the cities at the Terminator line, bright but not overwhelming, part of the planet rather than dominating it. Beautiful, she thought, worth protecting, worth everything we built to keep it safe. Her communicator chimed. "Admiral, we have an incoming transmission from the Krythani fleet. Commander Thex'ala requests permission to send a final message before they leave the system." "Put him through." The holographic display activated, showing the alien commander. He looked different than he had during their earlier conversation. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. "Admiral Park," he said, and his translator rendered his tone as respectful. "I wanted to speak with you before we depart. What I witnessed to date has given me much to consider." "I'm glad to hear that. The Dominion has conquered many worlds. I myself have led the subjugation of 14 species. We believed this made us strong, that our willingness to take what we wanted proved our superiority." He paused. "I now see that we have been confusing strength with brutality. True strength is what I saw today. The power to destroy coupled with the wisdom to refrain. The ability to conquer coupled with a choice to protect instead." "We're not perfect," Park said. "We've made terrible mistakes. We hurt each other and nearly destroyed ourselves. But we learned. We changed. We chose something better. I will recommend to my superiors that the Dominion reconsider its approach to expansion," Thex'ala said. "I cannot promise they will listen. The Dominion is ancient and its ways are deeply rooted, but I will try. Your example has shown me that there are paths we have not considered. That's all we can ask. Safe travels, Commander. You're welcome to return to our system anytime you want to talk, to trade, to learn, just not to conquer." "Understood." Thex'ala's mandibles clicked in what might have been his species' equivalent of a smile. "Perhaps, in time, the Dominion and humanity can meet again under better circumstances. I would like that." "So would we." The transmission ended, and Park allowed herself a small smile. One more species that had come as an enemy and left with a different understanding. One more potential ally in a galaxy that humanity was still learning to navigate. It was progress. Slow, hard-won progress, but progress nonetheless. 3 days later, the Krythani fleet crossed the boundary of the Sol system's heliosphere and engaged their faster-than-light drives. They vanished into the vast dark, carrying with them a story that would spread throughout the Dominion and beyond. The story of Earth, the garden world, of humanity, the species that could have conquered but chose to defend, of a civilization that measured its strength not by what it could take, but by what it could protect. On Earth, life continued. The wolves that Sarah Chen studied moved through Yellowstone's wilderness, hunting and playing and raising their young in forests that had been carefully restored to health. In the oceans, whale populations that had once teetered on the brink of extinction now numbered in the hundreds of thousands. In cities that blended seamlessly into the landscape, humans went about their lives, building and creating and loving in a world they'd learned to cherish. In orbit, 300,000 Guardian satellites maintained their silent watch, invisible to the naked eye but always present, always ready, always protecting. On Mars, the shipyards worked continuously, building the next generation of warships that would defend humanity's home. In the belt, miners extracted resources from asteroids that would become hull plating and weapon systems and shield generators. In the Jupiter system, the massive dreadnoughts of the Outer Fleet conducted training exercises that would keep their crews sharp and ready. And in the void between stars, 6 other alien species who had once threatened Earth and learned the truth spread their own stories. Stories of the humans who could have destroyed them but chose mercy instead. Stories of a species that built strength not to conquer but to preserve. Stories of Earth, the most heavily defended planet in known space, and the civilization that loved it enough to turn an entire solar system into its shield. The galaxy was learning, slowly, but it was learning. In her office on Lunar, Admiral Park wrote a letter to her granddaughter on Mars. The girl was 7 years old, born in the red soil of humanity's second home, and she'd never seen Earth in person. But she would someday. Park had promised her that, when she was old enough, she'd come to Earth and walk in the forests and swim in the oceans and see for herself why humanity had built such mighty walls around their homeworld. Dear Sam, Park wrote, today we sent away another species that thought we were weak. Another group of aliens who looked at Earth and saw only what they wanted to see. They're gone now, hopefully wiser than they arrived. Your mother tells me you're studying galactic history in school. I hope your teacher is telling you the truth about what we are and what we've built. We're not conquerors, Sam. We're not even really warriors. We're gardeners. We're protectors. We look at something beautiful and we choose to keep it safe, no matter what that costs us. That's what makes us human. That's what will always make us human, as long as we remember why we built our fleets and why we keep them close to home. We're strong because we have something worth defending, and we're wise because we know that true strength isn't about what you can destroy, it's about what you can protect. Remember that, sweetheart. Always remember that. The galaxy needs more protectors and fewer conquerors. Be the first kind. Love, Grandma Jin. She sent the message and looked out at Earth one more time. The sun was rising over the Pacific, painting the ocean gold and blue. Somewhere down there, Sarah Chen was probably tracking her wolf pack. Somewhere, children were playing in parks that had been carefully preserved. Somewhere, artists were creating and scientists were discovering, and families were simply living their lives on the most beautiful planet in the known universe. And above them all, invisible but eternal, the 300,000 Dardians watched, waited, protected, because the aliens had scanned Earth for defenses and found none. They'd scanned the wrong planet, but they'd learned the right lesson. And that, Admiral Park thought as she watched the sunrise over humanity's home, was enough. For now, it was enough. The galaxy would continue to test them. More species would come, see Earth's beauty, and assume it meant weakness. Some would attack. Some would withdraw peacefully when they learned the truth. Some might even become friends, trading partners, allies in the vast dark. But Earth would endure, protected, cherished, loved, because humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all: the things you love most are worth protecting absolutely, especially if you're the only one who can. And they'd built a fleet to prove it.